Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us. I want to get started with what's on the agenda for today. A lot to cover. Okay, so it's all about how was that footage edited, and I want to break it down right now with Joseph Scott Morgan, forensic death investigator from Jacksonville State University. Joseph, it's great to have you here on the program. Let's talk about it. When you saw this footage from the, I don't know if you watched the documentary, but the real controversial point is in the finale. He's in the bathroom. There's a hot mic, and what we hear him say is, what the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course. That's a really dramatic way to end a show. But when you look at the actual transcript, and we talked about it on lawandcrime.com, this is actually what it says. I don't know what you expected to get. I don't know what's in the house. Oh, I want this. Killed them all, of course. I want to do something new. There's nothing new about that. He was right. I was wrong. The burping. I'm having difficulty with the question. What the hell did I do? That's very different, Joseph. And when we're trying to understand exactly what happened back in with all of these different allegations, that's a big point, I would say, for the defense there. And I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, it really is, Jesse. When it comes to these production companies, listen, they're not about, just as counsel stated in that recording we saw just a moment ago, they're not about, necessarily seeking truth and justice here. They're about creating a program where they are going to make money. No one works for free. And so the reality is this, they're about creating entertainment. So you can take a lot of liberty with the editorial process along the way. And they are not journalists. They're not journalists at all. They're not sitting back in an objective, from an objective perspective, some kind of 30,000 foot view looking down and trying to piece all of this together. That's not their purpose. And the public nor the court should be kind of tricked into thinking this.
But when we talk about the Susan Berman killing, this kind of execution-style shooting back in 2000, the way she was killed, what can you glean from that?
Well, it was, in fact, an execution. She was shot in the back of her head. What's so very curious about this case is that her and Durst had a very intimate relationship, and I don't mean in kind of a physical sense, but just they were friends, and everybody really thought for the longest, her family thought, there's no way Durst could have done this to her. As a matter of fact, in 1984, he actually gave her away at her wedding. That gives you some kind of sense of the relationship that they had, and that's not to say that that couldn't happen. Lord knows we talk about enough cases on this network regarding intimates who kill one another, don't we, Jesse?
A little too much, but yeah.
yeah, we do. And certainly in this particular case, it's within the realm of possibility. But this was an execution. This is a classic execution style homicide where this young woman is literally shot in the back of the head.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrible, and it's important to understand the backstory of this and what this trial is about, because when we go back, and we're going to play some more right now of what was happening yesterday, did Durst confess? We talk about it with the Jinx documentary, and we also talk about it with the cadaver note, which we'll touch upon in a minute. So anything the state can have to try to tie him to a murder almost 20 years ago is really a big point. Let's hear more from Chip Lewis, who's this defense attorney for Durst, speaking yesterday. So, Joseph, look, it's all about did he confess or not, and was the tape manipulated? In your experience, do defendants, would it be outside the realm of possibility, murderers, people who are in these kinds of positions, would they ultimately confess? Do they say these things to themselves, talk about it, and maybe, he didn't know that he was on a hot mic, but is it uncommon for them to try to grasp with what they're dealing with and actually say these things out loud? I mean, you tell me. Or is it really just a case of misunderstanding?
Yes, it's sometimes it can just be a spontaneous admission. Police deal with this on a regular basis, particularly in the interview process, and we begin to talk about, we think about things like, for instance, where the police develop a rapport. And Jesse, look, full disclosure here, you and I have both been involved in dramatic productions and that sort of thing in the past. And you know how these environments are. You develop kind of this relaxed environment. People are talking, and there might be just this spontaneous admission. But the thing about it is this: when I was an investigator, if I made notes about things, for instance, there were recordings, all of that stuff, everything that I did, not just the official report, but all of my notes were subject to review. And so I had to retain all of that stuff. It's a different world in entertainment. You know, they leave things. We've heard the old adage about leaving things on the cutting room floor. You know, footage and these sorts of things, and even their notes that they make. And they take copious notes at these you know, during these interview processes for purposes of entertainment, because they're trying to determine what is going to look good visually and what is going to sound good to the consumer. And so this is a very interesting development relative to this case, where it's kind of the courts and law enforcement meet entertainment, and this kind of intersection that's taken place here. And it's a very interesting dynamic. How's the court going to view this? And you know, one point I think I'd like to hear your thoughts about it, because they were talking about that the production company is not an agent of the law enforcement world. So that's kind of an interesting view.
Yeah, that is, in terms of what actually qualifies. You can provide information to police, but were you directed by police? And apparently they didn't meet that actual barrier, that actual requirement that you need, to that level of cooperation, direction, instruction, that you're under the control and supervision of the police, and that you're actually an agent. They were just saying, well, we created something and then we had some information and gave it to the police. It's kind of different. I understand where the judge went. Some people might agree, some people might not. What I am going to tell you is we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to play more of what happened in court yesterday. Stay tuned.